Hi everyone, Ben here. Just wanted to make a quick note that before we listen to this episode, that this episode is a little different than what Jamie and I typically do at Goalie Science. We brought on two guests who we think are fantastic but for a little bit more of a light-hearted type episode. So a little less science, a little more banter, and maybe just overall a little bit different than what you've come to expect with us. If this doesn't sound like an episode that you're super interested in, tune in next week. We'll be starting a new series, bringing on a bunch of different analysts to talk about how stats and how analytics are being used to evaluate goalies and how they're being used to evaluate players and how we can importantly use them to make us better goalies and plan for better goaltending. I've also included timestamps in this episode because we cover a bunch of different topics. So if you want to jump around and pick a topic that you're more interested in, you can find those in the show notes. If you are listening, I hope you enjoy it. And if this one's not for you, we appreciate you listening anyway, and we hope to get you at another time. Thank you, everyone, as always, for listening and for your support.
What a save! Mercy, what a stop!
My goodness, what a save!
What a save! What a glove save there!
What a stop! Looked like a sure goal.
You talk about an A+ save and maybe the save of the night.
Welcome to the Goalie Science Podcast, the podcast where we try to bridge the gap between goaltending science and peak performance. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Phillips, a physical therapist and goalie performance specialist. I'm joined as always by Dr. Ben Surratt. Whether you're at home, at the rink, or in the car, grab a cup of your favorite beverage and let's drop the puck on this week's episode.
Hello, everyone. This week, Jamie and I are back, but we brought friends. And we're going to use that word liberally because the people we brought in today are going to lead to a respectful and earnest discussion around goaltending. No, we're super lucky to be joined by Coach Derek Bugin, who you've probably heard his name about 400 times on the podcast if you've been listening, because it's all Jamie talks about. He's still trying to make Derek proud.
I'll never make it's like just you're the father that went away to get milk and cigarettes, and you're just always trying to impress him. Yeah.
But he stayed in your life entirely the whole time. Exactly. And then we're also joined by Coach Michael Albanese, who's here to talk about some goaltending topics. So this is for those who know Jamie and know Derek and know Albo for maybe we've a crossover. I've heard this before. They used to have a little bit of a podcast a few years ago. We brought them back on. We've been in a bit of a discussion the past few days, and it got nowhere over text messages. So we brought it on the internet, on the line, to try and hash some things out. I'm going to take a backseat this episode. I'm going to try to moderate this. We're going to cover a couple topics we think are pretty relevant to some discussions that have been going on online. And hopefully this is a bit of a lighthearted and fun episode. So Jamie, I said I'm going to moderate it, but what are we talking about?
Well, we're going to start off with what I teased the last podcast, which was my hot take that I saved for Instagram because I knew it was going to do well in the algorithm. But my hot take was there is no such thing as a hybrid goalie. The term briefly existed in the early to mid 2000s, but is no longer a thing. And that's our discussion in the group chat that we have. It's been going back and forth, but to talk about some of the comments, some of them hurt my brain quite a bit. To be fair, the conclusion I drew from that is, apparently the beer leaguers get upset because when I think of goaltending, I don't immediately think of beer league goalies. Sometimes I think of the NHL, and they do not like that. And that is a problem on my side, and I need to be more considerate of them. But really what was going down to is we had this discussion for, Albo was really on the kind of the other side of it, where he was more of a hybrid exists. This is what it is. This is the model. And so Albo, since you are for me, you're opposite of me. I want to hear your opinions on what is hybrid goaltending? When did it exist, if it existed? And what are your thoughts around it?
Well, I'm a little surprised to say, Jamie, that you think that I'm opposite you, because I was agreeing with you. I also believe that hybrid goaltending is really no longer a thing. So I will kind of kick it back to you and ask you, when you say hybrid goaltending, obviously in order for something to be a hybrid, it has to be a combination of two or more things. So what are the two styles that you think of when you think hybrid, when you originally had that hot take?
Well, you think of hybrid, so again, two things together. So you have butterfly and you have stand-up. The way that I describe the textbook or the dogma around a stand-up and butterfly goalie would be a stand-up goalie is someone that tries to be on their feet for every save. Don't go down, or go down as little as possible. Butterfly goalie is you go down every single time and you do not react. You are primarily a blocking goalie. So if you put them together, the hybrid idea is that you are reacting into saves and you go down on low shots and you stay up on the occasional high shots. And so if we think of that definition, that's sort of just goaltending if you leave out the staying up on high shots. Now, Ben, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, this is, you know what? I'm just going to let Derek say it because this is going to be easier. Derek, can we just move on? Can we just end this so we can move on? Please just end the conversation.
First of all, these two guys are both now afraid to argue with each other when we had a group chat where all they did was argue for 40 straight hours.
I was arguing with you.
Thing.
I was No. I was saying the
you're
same
all
thing.
wrong. It makes no difference. Okay, number one, the term hybrid. Okay, I'm a little bit older than all of you, but when in 2004 you guys were still in diapers when this became a topic of discussion. The term hybrid was a model of equipment that I think TPS or Vaughn, somebody put the word hybrid on a piece of equipment, and then it became, this is for the hybrid goalie.
And no, I disagree.
Of course you do, because you're wrong. But it doesn't matter, because, listen, let me finish. Your argument or your idea is that a hybrid goalie plays a stand-up style. Stand-up goalies haven't played in the NHL since 1987. Like, in what world did you? What do you mean no? In what?
No, because the definition that when the numerous DMs and comments I get when people are like, "Oh, I'm a hybrid goalie," and I always say, "Well, what does that mean?"
Because they don't know what the hell they're talking
exactly. I'm trying to get around that. The hybrid goalie doesn't exist.
Now,
they don't even know what they're talking about.
I agree. That's the whole point. Is that it doesn't exist.
Everyone, this is 4 minutes in. It's already
So the hybrid goalie. So if you're saying that the origin of hybrid goaltending comes from a pad that will rotate properly and not be like the Marty Brodeur Heaton pads, so that's where hybrid goalie started.
He laid fours. Yeah, they were sick. No, I don't remember which brand it was, and I'm not going to waste my time by Googling it. But the hybrid goalie pad was a softer pad that the goalies could get up back to their feet easier than the stiff pad. That is why they named it the hybrid. And then the general consensus because of this was that a hybrid goalie was a stand-up goalie that went into a butterfly. Well, in the NHL, there was no such thing as a goalie that played stand-up but went down into a butterfly. Number one, that's just a goalie. And number two,
thank you.
Hybrid goalie, the actual discussion around hybrid goaltending came in when Marc-Andre Fleury got in the league. When Marc-Andre Fleury got in the league and he played an ultra-athletic style, and that contrasted the blocking style that was primarily taught at the time. So the hybrid goaltending model originally was the merging of athleticism and blocking. It was not stand-up and butterfly. That is exactly the general.
Can I chime in? I would like to chime in.
You are the giant tiger of goalie gurus here. So you're going to tell us exactly what Joe from Barton Double Rinks thought hybrid goaltending was. So yes, please, I would like to be enlightened.
Okay. So my original comment on Jamie's post was that hybrid goaltending as a term, as a methodology, no longer exists because it's a combination of stand-up and butterfly, and stand-up doesn't exist. So there can no longer be that hybrid because one doesn't exist. Fair? I think we all can agree on that.
I agree. That's what you said. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't see how that's wrong.
Because it's not a combination of stand-up and butterfly.
So it was when it first came out. That's what hybrid originally meant.
So people thought it was, but it was never what it actually was.
Derek, you're looking at it from your lens. I'm looking at it from like, what did the world of goaltending actually discuss and say? You're looking at it as what was my opinion.
I finally get what it's like to be one of the moderators on a debate. Like those, say about politics. I think the part that we haven't actually brought up, which I think is a major driver, and I think Albo's coming from this side too, is like what the NHL video games did for like pick a goalie. When you like made a goalie in NHL video games, you could make them stand up, butterfly, or hybrid style. And so for like a lot of people, those were the three options when you were a little kid growing up. Make a goalie on the NHL, the EA Sports games. And so like, but I think it's never been well defined, right? I think like each definition is both right and wrong. Obviously, Derek, I can't speak to what it was like being a goalie in the Stone Age. And so I have a hard time remembering what it was like when pads were filled with horsehair. But I can imagine those would have been pretty revolutionary for you when you guys got styrofoam or foam. So,
well, no, it was horsehair, and then it was like the shiver and the Von Velocity was like full of fabric shaving that was punched in, and the head foam.
So here, first of all, I like the idea of...
I like how you talk with your hands so much.
Italiano. I like the idea of looking at equipment as a way to kind of summarize the times of goaltending. And you talk about hybrid gear. What about butterfly gear? Do you guys remember the CCM blockade?
Yeah.
That was like a pad that came out. That was like the only thing that goalies need to do is just butterfly. That's what this pad is for. That's what this is. You're just going to build the wall. CCM blockade. And what I said in the text chain of J.S. Giguère basically took the blocking or the butterfly style as far as it could possibly go, and has since been dialed back because you have to be a certain special kind of athlete to be able to have success playing that way. But do you guys think like the blockade, even the Von Velocity, was like the start of like the butterfly style?
No, it was the Coho 5. It was like the Coho was even before that.
I would say the
580s and the 590s. No, the 590s were fatter than the 580s. The 580s were the skinny ones. The 590s were fat.
Well, the 590 was Patrick Waugh's pad. And that's why I said Patrick Waugh was the originator of the butterfly style.
Sorry.
You guys, actually, Glenn Hall was.
Oh. Yeah, that's okay. That's fair.
So the 590s, the Patrick Waugh version is not the version that became the chunky version, right? There was that year where they switched to being essentially that rectangle shape, right? Like same time as right before the blockades, the 590s. I remember this because fellow Hamilton goalie David Shantz had them in the OHL in like 2002, 2003 when the 590s, when every company started making them really extra square. And again, Jamie can plaster on the J.S. Giguère wearing 590s picture in the purple duck sweater where he takes up the entire net. Everyone knows the picture I'm talking about. It's the biggest butterfly in the world.
I think those would have been 580s. I don't think Giguère would wear 590s.
Oh, well.
Okay, but let's into that aspect. So what what's so
goalie nerds,
Boosh. So what you're saying is that hybrid goaltending or the hybrid goalie, the genesis is the equipment, not the style.
The genesis of hybrid goaltending was when the equipment started labeling hybrid on them, on the models, stitched in hybrid. People assumed, the general public assumed, and people who had a little bit of knowledge around goaltending assumed it was for stand-up goaltending mixed with butterfly goaltending. When possibly, but the actual discussion and the actual synergy, like trying to merge styles, was not stand-up and butterfly. It was trying to merge athleticism and blocking goaltending together. That is where, and that is the actual definition of a hybrid goaltender.
That's your definition, but I don't think that is the general definition.
No, it's not.
That the majority of hockey.
Which goalie, when this term, when was this? I
don't think it exists. Like if you say Marc-Andre Fleury is not a hybrid goalie. Marc-Andre Fleury, I would say Marc-Andre Fleury is a butterfly.
Came in the league as a ultra athletic, all over the place goaltender, and Marc-Andre Fleury did butterflies. He was not a butterfly goalie. He was an athletic goalie.
He's like a really good example of like ushering in the modern era of goaltending, though, right? Like you want to really
agree 100%. Yeah, and that's why I said this is when the discussion began, was when he came in. Because if you look at when he came,
I think it was before he came
dominating the league. Well, he came in fairly early, like what 2003
was his draft year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that, and I think he played as an 18-year-old. He played his 6 games before going back to junior.
So
Yeah. I mean, like, I think ultimately, Jim, at the end of the day, like, I think the question, like, the original post that you had is still right? Like, I think the idea that there is no hybrid, there's no defined playing styles left in goaltending. It's now just a big bowl of soup, right?
I
Like,
agree
there's
with that. That's fair.
yes, I also agree with that.
right. Like, I think if you can define someone's playing style, it's probably not a good thing. I think Derek said that as well. Like, if you could watch someone play and say, like, oh, that's a hybrid goalie, you're probably, as an evaluator, crossing that person off your list.
Yes.
Because there's a distinct reason that they stand out, and there's probably not a good thing.
The best is the kids that say, I play an unorthodox style and I'm having a lot of success. And then it's like, well, yes, you are having success at this level, but this style of play will not allow you to have success at the next level, the level after that, and all the level that you want to get to. So yeah, you're 100% right. If us watching, if we write down this is a butterfly goalie, or this is a goalie who relies on his reflexes, which we hear a lot, right?
So
if you were described as a goalie who relies on your reflexes, boys and girls out there listening, that's basically a nice way of saying that you are positionally a nightmare.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It also
But
means
again,
you're never set for the shot, right? Like, they're all just buzzwords of saying feet aren't set, not in the right spot, diving around.
yeah, I know, I'd agree. Like, the thing is, I didn't realize that this conversation was going to go, like, in our group thread. I didn't think it was going to be gear based because, again, like, I people be like, oh, I'm a hybrid goalie or I'm an athletic goalie. Those mean absolutely nothing to me. Like we were saying before, like, I don't want to hear that. That usually means something is not right. Because,
To
again,
me, in that chat, I said, like, to me, saying that I'm an athletic goalie or the term hybrid goalie was like me saying Carey Price was a skating goalie. Like, yeah, the guy was the best skater maybe who ever lived and changed the way we taught goalies based on the way he used his feet and skated and floated and didn't cut deep with his edges. But does anybody call Carey Price a skating goalie? Or is Carey Price just a phenomenal goalie?
Again, but he is part of the reason why we don't have labels for goalies again. Like, he's part of that generation that influenced modern goaltending, right? Like, again, Fleury and Price are probably the two biggest names that I would argue have had the biggest impact on modern goaltending. You can start putting up. Oh,
What about Lundqvist?
well, I was good. My next follow up was going to say it's those two, and then you add Lundqvist and Luongo, who really changed how goaltenders played depth, because they were also the last people to hang out from the big blocking era, though, right? Like, they played like the same way, like that you would look at like pre-equipment change era was, right? Abo?
Yeah, I love the call to Henrik Lundqvist. I've actually really enjoyed in the playoffs. I saw him on the panel and his insights into goaltending. I don't know if you guys watched it or heard what he had to say at all. Kind of gives a little look behind the curtain into his style and why he played the way that he played. And he was always emphasizing that as a goalie, you have to be aware of where all the threats are, where everybody is, where your teammates are. And I think that was why he played such a deep game, deep positionally, because he never really seemed to be surprised by things, right?
Yeah, he also skated within his abilities. I mean that in the best way possible. Henrik Lundqvist is like one of the greatest goalies to ever play professional hockey. But if you objectively looked at his skating abilities compared to his peers, yeah, he played differently because he had to play the game differently, right?
Yeah,
you wouldn't compare Lundqvist and Price's skaters together.
Yeah, and I think going into a new season here with a new goalie that I haven't worked with before, my mentality is not to put on him a style or a playing technique that I think he should use. My objective is to see what he's already doing and how can I get the best out of him. What little things can I kind of help him be a mirror into his own game? Derek actually talked about, not to harp on the JS Gear thing, but I think you were talking about a time where his JS's goalie partner was like a completely different goalie than JS was himself. And his goalie coach, it might have even been a layer, was like, I'm teaching one guy one thing and the other guy the other thing, because I'm just trying to get them to be the best that they are as individuals, rather than like trying to get them to play a certain style.
It's funny that you we use Francois Allaire as that definition, because he's skating at his camps every summer exclusively just trying to mash everyone into the same mold, and you had to do it his way or no way at all. But I mean, but what you just defined was how that's just good coaching. If you are trying to fit, was it a round hole to square peg, or square peg and a round hole, whatever. If you're trying to create everything, every single goalie to be the same structurally, 1 out of the 1,000 are going to work. Whereas if you just if you teach the same foundational things, positioning, tracking, play reading ability, and then all the variables in between, if you play with the goalie strength to build up some of their weaknesses, that's just good coaching. So again, as someone who is also in an organization where I was not allowed to play within my strengths, and I was forced to play like my goalie partner, who I was not that still happens, but hopefully that shouldn't, if you're a coach listening or you're a goalie listening and your goalie coach is telling you that you have to play like this person and you are nowhere near as flexible, skater, tall, anything like that, it's not going to be a recipe for success. It's going to be a recipe for significant frustration.
So I'm going to throw something out as kind of the bridge point here. I'm going to give it to Derek first. So we just said there's not those same, buckets that people used to put goalies in, whether, whatever you want to call them. What do you think are the big separators between goalies these days? You can, whatever age group you want to say, if you want to say kids developing, if you want to say, junior college, pro, whatever age group, what, we're not calling people butterfly, hybrid, Santa, but what are the big differences in playing style that you would say separates people now, Derek?
We want to just talk about in terms of what the big separator between guys that are elite and guys that are trying to be elite. It's their ability to, their ability to see the game in slow motion, it's play reading ability, and that is the single biggest factor, I believe, now from being able to move up levels. If we want to talk about in terms of style, is that more the question you were looking at?
No, I mean both. Yeah, I would agree with the idea that the biggest difference you see in goalies who will succeed at next levels is the combination of reading and anticipation, right? They read the game better. And we've talked a lot about how that's really hard to train, if that's trainable. But what about even people within the same level, right? Let's say you're out watching, someone's asked you to go watch, a half dozen junior A goalies, and they all play very differently. What would you expect to see that separates those goalies that would make them, different stylistically?
I mean, that's going to be biased towards each individual coach. For me, it's I look, can they skate? Do they have the ability to beat pucks on their feet? And can they track the puck? And everything else to me will fall in between if they can do those two things. So if I got 30 goalies on the ice, I can cut 20 of them out just because their feet aren't good enough to play at that level. Once their feet aren't good enough, then that tells you that their eyes aren't good enough. Because if they're slow to react, if they're slow to beat pucks on their feet, they're either slow to process, or it's a physical thing with the skating, or they're just positionally not there either. But I mean, that's it. To me, it's automatic. It's feet and eyes. If you can track pucks, process pucks, read the play, then you can use your feet. But they have to go hand in hand together. Otherwise, you can't use either. If you can't skate, it's hard to use your eyes. Yeah, because your eyes are never behind the puck. Everything is always outside of your vision. You're always using your peripheral. Even if we turn our head, head trajectory is a big thing, but I think it's an over thought thing. But in terms of acuity and getting pucks into our line of vision in front of our eyes, that's a big thing. And if you don't have the ability to skate, that's going to hinder your ability to use your eyes, because now we're not looking at a straight line at the puck anymore. So they have to go hand in hand together.
Yeah, that's my first big separator is what I would classify as strong skating goalies, and then goalies who have to adapt to not being strong skating goalies, right?
And I would never say that's the be all and end all.
No,
Jamie. I mean, we make fun of Jamie for not being a good skater. Jamie wasn't a good skater.
Relative to NHL goalies.
Yeah, he was good enough skater to have success at the AHL level.
Yeah,
but I mean, Jamie didn't get to the NHL. Didn't play NHL minutes. So Did his skating have to be better? Yeah, it did.
Sorry, Jamie.
But we can say that about 99% of the goalies that strap on the pads at 8 years old and then decide that they're 20 and they're no longer that NHL dream. That's almost every single one of us. Those guys that are skating at that level are like, they're special.
Yeah, we've had that before where you or I have said someone at the NHL level is not a strong skater. And
Aiden, you mean Aiden Hill?
No. We don't.
Well, you know what else?
Say that?
Oh, sorry. You know what else? Stuart Skinner isn't a great skater either.
No, he's not. No. But that's the thing. People. And so what I was trying to get to a little with my question, Derek, and I'm going to throw this to Albo and Jamie too. But it's like, yeah, in the NHL, you can kind of start bucketing goalies a little bit by how they skate at that level. And even within those different little, like, we'll call them skating buckets, like you have people who are just incredible at it. Like, again, I don't think anyone walks out of this call and says Connor Hellebuck is the best skater in the NHL, but he might very well be the best goalie in the NHL, right? But he plays differently. He plays a lot differently than someone like UC Saros, who is always the automatic comparison because he's a very good skater and very dynamic, et cetera, right? So, like, again, you can be a not good skater within your relative group. And again, when your group's the NHL, you have a little bit more flexibility of like what that means.
You can have elite skill. You can be an elite puck tracker. You can be an elite skater, elite flexibility. You can be elite at every single skill set that we want to identify and still not be a good NHL goalie.
Yep. You can be elite at those
Skill
things
is
and
not
struggle to play junior A.
exactly.
Like we all evaluate, and evaluating goalies, I think is making the first like 80% of cuts is pretty easy.
Yeah.
The last like 20%, it becomes more difficult. But we've talked about it before. It's like the idea of a practice goalie. Coaches that don't know what you're going to do, they're like, oh, I always want a game goalie. Well, again, it's one of those like general bucket terms. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Everybody plays in a game.
Everyone that plays in the game is a game goalie. No, they're a gamer. You know, they make that massive save. But when we look at that, like Derek said, you can have exceptional technical abilities, flexible, all these things. But you could also just be a bad goalie, like, because you are bad at stopping pucks. When that puck comes at you, you are not good at making the save. And then you have goalies that, you know, people like the category I'd fall under, who, you know, were great skaters, weren't overly athletic or flexible, but were good at making the saves when we needed to make saves. Stuart Skinner, for example, Aiden Hill, for example, and Connor Hellebuck, for example. Like, these are all examples of goalies that aren't technically the ideal model that we as coaches probably would want to have, but they are some of the best in the world. So, like, but we get caught up on these things in terms of, like, you know, if you don't play like Lucy Sar, like, you'll get evaluation coaches and head coaches and goalie coaches like, well, you don't play like this. It's not what I want to see. But how do you evaluate though that last 20%? I guess would bring me my next question, because I think that's really hard to do. You know, when I did Muskegon's camp in the USHL, again, the first percent of cuts, easy to make. And then how, you know, in a goalie environment before games, like, how do you evaluate who can read a play? You know, when I created, I could do battle drills and battle situation things. I think that's one of the best ways to probably develop instinct, but also to evaluate who understands the game and what's happening in front of them. And you probably try to throw goalies into that situation.
Well, so let's put that to Albo first. Albo, you've been tasked with making evaluations in like we'll call it like a short situation. You don't have a ton of games. Maybe it's like 1 or 2 exhibition games. Maybe it's just some practice. What's the things you're looking for that's going to, you know, put your brain thinking that, okay, that person can put those pieces together that we want, you know, just beyond the skating, just beyond the puck tracking? What else are you looking for to try to identify that?
Yeah, I mean, that situation that you described where I don't have a whole lot of time to decide between 1, 2, maybe 3 goalies is kind of the situation I find myself in every year. I do far less short-term goalie evaluating than probably all 3 of you. I'd say definitely all 3 of you. So my experience with goalies is more like over the course of a season, I have 2 guys that I'm working with all year, same guys. So when it comes to that short-term thing, I'll go back to what Derek said, eyes and feet. right? Derek is the guy that I kind of talk goalie with most. I learn from the most. So what I have to say is not going to be too different from what he said. But one thing that I always look for is like, does this goalie have things in his game that are like automatic, where I can tell that they're turning off their brain, so to speak, almost in like a bad way, where they're like, once I'm in this situation, I'm no longer considering like reading, looking, analyzing. I'm just going to drop and like, oh.
You mean they have defaults that they'll always go to kind of thing?
Yeah.
You mean the blocking zone? That's just going to be my...
Well, that's actually exactly what I am talking about.
Yeah.
But the way that I look at it is I look to say, where is their blocking zone? Like, because the blocking zone, when it exists for everyone.
It exists.
It does exist. It is a thing. But like the blocking zone is very tight to you.
Should
and
be.
like when guys have like a really expanded far out blocking zone where like the guys will be far enough away where like you can definitely track that puck, but they just like turn it into like a blocking situation. I'm like, okay, this gonna be tough.
Derek, I want to ask you the same thing about the short-term evaluation, but I really want to hear you talk about the blocking zone more.
No, we'll get to the blocking zone. My memory is not as good as it used to be, but I just want to say one thing on this short term and
Please do.
There's been like, I don't know about you guys, but going to a coach and just saying to the guy or them asking you like, hey, what do you think of this guy? And you're just like, I like him and I can't tell you why. I just like him. Right? Like that to me is like, the more we do this, like you get a gut feeling about a guy and you're like, yeah, I know he's not good right now, but like, I just know this kid's going to be good by Christmas. And I can't tell you why. And I can't guarantee that this guy will be a number one guy, but there's just something about this kid I like. Like to me, it comes down to like that last little thing is like just like a little bit of grit, like a little bit of toughness. And like we want guys with like a little bit of swagger, right? Like a little bit of like, I don't want to swear, but use your imagination, like a little bit of like, you know what I mean?
You mentality.
Yeah. Like that's, you kind of want a little bit of that. And like, there's been a couple times, especially like later on into my coaching career, like when I first started, like everyone, new coaches especially, and young coaches especially, fall in love with technique. Like we see a guy and we're like, oh, like he just looks so good. He looks like a goalie. Like we fall in love with it. And I fell into that trap for a long time. And I'm kind of realized like, hey, that didn't work out so to watch. Sometimes like I fell in love with some of the wrong things in the wrong times. And now it's more to me like, if it's close, I'm going with that kid with a little bit of swagger. I'm going with that kid with a little bit of grit. Like just that kid where you're like, I can't tell you why I like this kid, but I like this kid. And like, just take a chance on this kid. And for the most of the time, like it's worked out pretty well for me.
I believe you would criticize the entire CHL goaltender committee just like that with your comment around technique. How dare you?
Wow.
Well, I think I know Alba had his hand up, so I'll let you go right after this, Alba. You know, because coaching and goalie coaching is, you know, there's so what like so I would say rampant, but there's so many opportunities. You know, I would say a large percentage of goalies have that requisite ability.
Yeah.
Especially if you know, to probably get to like maybe like one step. So you're going from AA to AAA. You know, the decent goalies at AA have a similar requisite ability to play AAA compared to like say the bottom goalies of AAA, for example. But there has to be some things that differentiate athletes, including goalies. And like Derek's saying, there's you know whether you want to put it as that FU mentality, that swagger, that quiet confidence, that cockiness. You know, there's some sort of mental attributes that also have to be taken in consideration, because of sports is mental as well. And so is it really difficult to quantify? That's why sometimes you got to use your gut feeling. And like Boosh said, like sometimes you tell coaches like, I like this goalie for a reason. Or sometimes it's just like, there's something about this goalie that I don't think that they have it, even though technically they look good in their very controlled, confined drills. And so again, like that's why hopefully it's hard. I mean, it's harder to evaluate goalies when there's 40 goalies on the ice and you have 2 hours of skating. But it's nice to get to kind of know and evaluate goalies based on their personality and be able to speak with them on the ice and watch them and their mannerisms, all the things that just provides you more information. Then you can take that information and compare it to other goalies that you've seen that are successful at similar traits. And it gives you takes more of a picture in terms of what has worked and what will continue to work in the future.
At some point, you just need to stop the puck. Like, I think we can, like, I know that sounds silly, but I think we've all kind of beat around the bush on that one, right? Like, there is a base level that everyone who's competent can do. And sometimes the differentiating factor, like Booch said, is you just got to stop the puck. Yeah, Abo?
Yeah. That you got to stop the puck thing goes right into why I raised my hand originally. And it's throughout the course of the year, there's been some goalies that embrace the reality that they are a difference maker, or can be, or should be on any given night. And there are some goalies that kind of like shirk that responsibility aside. Like, I remember we had, without naming names, within the last 4 or 5 years, we had a goalie that was an average goal. I didn't really see a reason to cut him or keep him. He was a good backup goalie, and there were games that we would lose 4-3, and I'd say, "What'd you think of the game?" Well, one, I definitely could have had, and there was another one that I probably should have had. I was like, okay, well, that's 2 in a game that we lost by 1 goal. Like, that is the difference, and you don't really seem to really be bothered by the fact that you had the opportunity to turn that into a 3-2 game, a 3-2 win, and we lost 4-3, and you're just like, well, I probably could have had it, but I just didn't. You know what I mean? Like, that little bit of swagger that Derek's talking about, a lot of times is the difference between a guy who embraces the difference maker role and a guy that doesn't really appreciate the difference maker role.
Yeah, you can, like, also, I mean, even in that story, I was expecting to say that he only talked about 2 of the goals, because, like, the thing that I always come to, especially with goalies who are, we'll say junior age and going to university on the pro, younger goalies, is the like deferral of responsibility. Like, you can let in 2 backdoor tap-ins and still have played the scenario entirely wrong. Like, I had that at camp. One of our goalies, he's like an awesome young goalie. He's going to be great. He's going to have a long junior career. He's going to go play college hockey, et cetera, et cetera. He's going to be great. But he misread 2 plays and let 2 backdoor tap-ins in. And he's like, well, there's a guy coming right down at me. What am I supposed to do? Like, play the scenario properly. Like, give yourself a chance.
Yeah,
like,
that actually, yeah, I completely agree. And that, a lot of times, our coach will say, "Oh, he had no chance on that." I say, "Well, he really did not read that very well." And there was a game in Niagara this year, and we went down 4-0 in the first period. And after the first period, I said, "You know what? Like, those first 3 goals, probably team goals. That 4th goal that you let in the last minute, I was like, that one's on you, because you committed to the shot way too early. There was some backdoor play that you gave 0 respect to." And I get that at a certain point, you got to make a decision one way or another. But I was like, that one's a tough one. And we ended up losing that game 4-3. It was early in the season, and we regrouped from there. But just because it's a backdoor tap-in, or it's a 2-on-0 or whatever it might be, a power play, 5-on-3, it doesn't automatically mean that the goalie had no chance. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. And, like, I mean, and this is something I think, for sure, this is a Buchanism, because I'm pretty sure I got yelled at for this once upon a time. But again, like, it's not, misreading a play doesn't mean that if you had done it perfectly, you would have stopped it, right? And I think that's something important for goalies to understand too, right? You could, in the story that I'm saying with the backdoor tap-in, right? Like, you could read that play better and still let the backdoor tap-in in, right? Like, that can just still happen. It doesn't change it, but it's the giving yourself a chance part. It's the give yourself the best read to make a save more often if that play were to repeat itself over and over again. And I think that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, Derek, about, like, what separates goalies that are able to kind of keep climbing the ranks is that the ones who learn to do that, or are just able to make that read, right?
Yeah, I was like,
go ahead, Jamie.
Sorry, I was just going to say that I also think there's a lot of things I want to say. I always want to say a lot of things, but I do think it's important that, we, all 4 of us, are evaluators every single day and at tryout time. And for goalies listening, goalies parents listening, it's okay that there are some things that some athletes just have that it factor, and that is okay. And I think like we always, our job is to develop, we develop goalies, we develop athletes, and we also develop young men and women. I think that we all agree that we kind of have the same mentality. But sometimes we get goalies and we're just, you'd be like, this goalie just is good. And we don't know why. They just get on the ice and they just do things well. Or maybe not the greatest skater, but they just stop the puck. And you can't put a finger on it. And I think that is okay to have. And I do think that like stressing over like why or how to recreate that, it can get you down like a rabbit hole. Like, why is LeBron James so good at basketball? I mean, he just is. Like, there's a lot of things, but there's a lot of other basketball players in the NBA that have a lot of those physical attributes that LeBron James has. LeBron James is just still really good at basketball. And so I think that that's an okay thing, but does that mean don't use that like as an excuse? Because going back to evaluating the goalie's personality and things like that, are they using excuses, that kind of thing, or are they taking ownership and accountability for things and then seeking out ways to improve upon like goals they give out?
Yeah.
Good awkward
Yeah.
silence. Did I mess it up? Should I say it again?
Yeah.
No, I think if we knew what made goalies really good, every goalie would be in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like the goalie coaches and goalies, we don't know. There's not the secret method or secret sauce. Like sometimes we get lucky. Like when I trained you and Jamie, and even like realistically, I trained all three of you. I didn't train you guys significantly different. And Jamie played in the AHL and the other two didn't. Like it's
Paul already threw into my game.
It's so much more.
I just had just hip injuries.
Yeah. Like it just comes down to like what Jamie says. Like some kids are just better, and like if we knew how to recreate it in every kid, we'd be paid a lot more than we are, and we try. Like we try. Like I got a really good crop of young goalies coming up. Like I'd say 12 and under. And I treat them all very, very different, personality-wise and like individually. We train the same kind of skill sets of eyes and feet, and everything else is we try to tailor individually. But if I knew how to make them all NHLers, I'd be living in a much bigger house and driving a much nicer boat.
Wait,
we had a nicer boat?
I don't have a boat.
He has a jet ski.
I'm still waiting on that jet ski.
Yeah. That was on me, but it's not gonna happen. Alba, you had something. I want to add another point in there.
Yeah, you go first.
No, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
All right. When you say, Derek, that if we knew how to recreate this, that all of our goals would be in the NHL. My question is, do you guys put any onus on us as goalie coaches being responsible for helping your goalies find that like quote unquote zone, so to speak? I think specifically about a goalie that we had years ago. I remember the first time I saw him play was in an exhibition game, and a preseason exhibition game, and he played really, really well. Like he was on it, he was in the zone, and he was never able to find that zone again throughout the rest of the season, and actually didn't even finish the year with us. And I'm kind of looking back at that being like, was there more that I could do, or like what could I have done to like help him find that groove, that zone, that confidence, whatever it could have been? Or is that something that's outside of our control as goalie coaches, and that's just like on them as individuals? What do you guys think about that?
When you say zone, do you mean like mental zone or like performance zone?
Like every zone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he was dialed in every way, really. Just played a phenomenal game.
So go ahead, Lex.
I was gonna say I'll like start this from like maybe the farthest. Well, I don't want to call it like sciencey, but just like informed from that lens. Like I really think when you think about like learning and skill development and behavior, like I really do think all you can do is lead a horse to water, right? Is you can show people and guide them and tailor it, like Derek's saying, to the personality, to the environment. But at the end of the day, like learning needs to stem from the individual, right? Like again, Derek could attest this. Like when I was a young kid, I was a stuck up little know-it-all when I was like a little teenager. Like I remember being that way. right? And I wouldn't change on some things, no matter how many times someone showed me it. I just knew that because that's the way I was when I was a little kid, right? And we see that now with little kids and teenagers and junior goalies and college goalies who don't change things or try to change too much. And I think that's a lot of what it is we can, our job is to give them the best informed advice and support and guidance and structure. Beyond that, you can't force someone to do anything, right? Like that's, so like, if you're telling someone that they should try to be a stand-up goalie now, you're probably making them worse, right? And I think that is one of the biggest things is humans are really good learners. So as long as you're giving like generally okay advice, it's why I'm not that critical of our goalie coaches ever, because unless they're really messing with the kid's probably going to keep getting better anyway, because just exposure and time.
And I believe, looking back, I think the nature of my advice when I saw that he was kind of struggling to find that zone again was something along the lines of stop being so focused on the technique side of it. And it's almost like he was playing to look good on film. And so like, if he watches it back, he would have been like, oh, like I was moving really well, but it's like, and my butterfly looked good. He just beat me over the glove. It's like, but you didn't save because you're like, you know what I mean? Like just play, just use your eyes and stop having everything so like automatic. And like Jamie said, like he had just everything was default. But that one game that I saw him play, it was the opposite of that. And he just got into this like default rut, and he, it took him out of the league basically.
Yeah. And at that point, I mean, I had the exact same experience this year with trying to get one of our goalies to stop playing like you're trying to be scouted and actually just stop the puck. But yeah, no, I really do think, Jamie, I'll toss it to you, but kind of same idea, right?
I was going to say, I do take ownership, even though I don't need to, just because I get heavily invested in my athletes. So I think it's cool. And I think I take ownership in terms of like, you just look back and be like, could I have done something different? Should I have done this, that? But also, I think that's the nature of all coaches. You look at your successful athletes and you're going to try to recreate. And you look at the ones that weren't successful and you're going to try to figure out like, what can you do better? Because that just helps you for the next group of kids. But I wanted to ask a question because this is another thing we talked about in the group was like hands, and we harp it all the time. But why do you guys think that? I guess I don't know if this is I'd say it's a generalization, but it's kind of a true one. North American goalies just really struggle to make saves with their hands, especially like for us that coach youth goalies. Like, what was it always this way? Like for Derek, that you've been coaching forever, has it always been like that, or is it a new thing? Like, I guess I'm still like, I know some coaches still teach blocking, which blew my mind last week. But
you ever handle football really hard at a kid? That's going to be taken out of context.
No, Ben, tell us more.
I know where Ben's going with this, and I agree. So I go with him, Ben.
I know where you
throw a football really hard at a kid, and their knee comes up, and they put their hands in front of their face. They don't catch the ball. And that's my metaphor for what we see with younger goalies. Derek, that's what I think. What do you think?
I think it's so simple. We overcoach catching, and we coach catching out of our goalies. It's so incredibly simple.
Yeah, throw a football out.
So, okay, think of this. Okay, we all played. Anybody listening has probably played or been around the game enough to know that, okay, you at the end of the season, you have your very last practice, right? You're going to put a defenseman in net. The goalie's always going to play out. Now, every single shot on that goalie who was a defenseman is going to go in, except for the shots that get glove, and that guy is going to windmill every single one of those pucks. So why can a guy who's not a goalie catch everything? Because how do you overcomplicate catching pucks?
I was gonna say, like, how do you coach someone out of catching pucks? Like, I try to think of for myself, because I don't think I hope I don't. Like, I really don't.
How many different posts on Instagram can you go right now and find about goalie coaches changing a goalie's stance and changing the way he holds his glove?
500.
I can find you 50 in like a minute. Right?
That is true. Actually, I just gave it a new goalie the other day, and they're like, "What do you think of my glove?" I was like, Brian's is pretty nice. He's like, no, the positioning. Like, we're doing skating drills. Like, I don't know if you can catch a puck or not. Like, I guess that makes sense. Okay, I didn't even think of that.
No,
we ruin them. We do.
Yeah.
Like,
no, so this is exactly Derek's. I couldn't agree more. And again, I always wonder subconsciously when I'm coaching where stuff comes from, right? Because sometimes kids will ask questions, those scenarios come up, and we all have to give advice, and coaching is our job. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know where that came from. So I wonder if some of this is from just honestly from you, Derek, growing up. But like I tell every single new goalie that comes to us who asks me about that, Jamie, that I don't care how they hold their glove unless they're holding it like, what's his face from the Leafs who briefly
Scrivens?
Yeah, Benny Scrivens, NHL legend, worked for him, right? I say like unless you're pointing your glove across your face, you can hold it wherever you want as long as you're kind of comfortable. Right? Like if you're trying to hold your glove away that's not comfortable, then we're gonna have a hard time pitching pucks. Right?
Like there's negatives and positives to any way you hold your glove. If you hold your glove fingers up, there's a positive, there's a negative. If you hold handshake like Hellebuck, there's a positive, there's a negative. But like for goalies, I won't change their stance other than like if their feet are too wide. Like that's a big one. Like you want to get your feet like under it. You don't want your feet too wide. But I'll let them just stand however they want to stand. And that includes like these guys, like nowadays, like we can thank Connor Hellebuck for this, but a lot of guys, young kids want to have their stick in the air. And parents are like, oh, he's got to have his stick down. No, he doesn't. He doesn't really need to have his stick down. No. As long as the stick goes down when he goes into a butterfly, it's cool. But I today you can go on, you can find 50 videos of coaches changing their stance and making kids rigid in their stance and coaching catching out of the goalies. Yep. And like I don't like talking about my kid at all. My kid's he's U10 AAA kid. I've never once changed his stance at all. My kid catches everything.
How many footballs did he throw when he was 5 years old?
Not if I threw a football and hit him in the face because he's the least athletic kid I know. But he catches everything.
You're saying the football like scouting report test is not a good one for evaluation.
If he goes to the combine, like the CFL combine, you're going to get laughed at.
That's important for us to know. We should test that. No, like I think in Elbow, you were asking about like how you get out of a rut or how you like. I think so much of it is overcoaching, right? We had Rob Gray on the podcast, who's like a learning expert. Like that's his whole career has been dedicated to learning about how we understand learning better and skill development. And he always talks about, and this is something that's talked about a lot, is like you need to put kids in environments where they can learn and figure stuff out for themselves. And now parents look at that and they get confused and they're like, well, why aren't you coaching my kid more, showing them every single thing what to do? But kids need to learn to succeed and fail and like to develop. And like why is every goalie a robot? We coach the life out of goalies. Now, don't get me wrong, you need to coach something into them because otherwise you're gonna have hybrid goalies stacking the pads on backdoor plays. But like you gotta.
What if it works though?
Hold on, what you're saying in Swiss whole time.
The hybrid goalies are right. So as we're nearing the end here, because this whole podcast stemmed from a hot take. Bouge or Alba, do you guys have any hot takes that you think get the people going?
World. Yeah.
I know I do.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't waiting 3 years for this.
Jeremy, clip the time so you know when to cut this out of the episode.
Okay, I don't know if I've brought this up to you guys yet, but I'm a little bit annoyed that people didn't make a bigger deal of Bobrovsky not winning the Conn Smythe.
Oh, this is an awful take. Wow.
Okay.
Sorry, Abel. I'm not even going to let you finish that. Dude, Derek, you got anything else? Well, actually, I will finish this. But I am the biggest Sergei Bobrovsky fan that I know. I think his story is incredible. I think he's an awesome goalie. He's probably getting paid about 2.5 times what he's actually worth these days. Legend, like an absolute legend. He probably shouldn't have been on a ballot for the Conn Smythe. Like the Florida Panthers are one of the best defensive hockey teams we've ever seen, and it's a great example on how goalies you need a good goalie who can make big saves because any goalie can stop 23s in the perimeter, as they should. And Bobrovsky would have been great. Stolars, I think, would have been great. It was McDavid, Barkov, and then probably like Gus Forsling was probably the third. I don't think Bobrovsky was even on many ballots. Sorry, Albo.
Surprises me.
Why? So why? Why are you so upset about this?
Well, I don't know. I love Bobrovsky, I guess. He also did not get credit for that save that he made in Game 6 when the game was winding down. To keep it at whatever, I think it was a 1-goal game. Keep it at 2-1.
Game 6, they lost?
We're celebrating.
It would have been Game 7 then. It would have been Game 7. I thought they won in 6, but I guess it was 7. Now that you're saying that.
What? Where were you the whole playoff? They were down 3-0.
Well, I really stopped watching once the Avalanche got eliminated, and then I started watching when the final came on. So you may be right because I did not watch the.
And then you're mad about Bobrovsky.
And now you're
This is perfect. No, this is.
I have a hot take. My hot take is people giving opinions on Conn Smythe when they haven't watched any of the games. That's my hot take. Self-admittedly, well, I didn't really watch any of the games. But
Hey, I saw, based on his highlight reel, he definitely should have won. That's all I'm saying.
I am so happy that Sergei Bobrovsky won a Stanley Cup. I remember texting Derek last year after the Panthers have eliminated the Leafs, being like, "But aren't you happy for Bobrovsky?" And Derek said, "I'm not, because knock the Leafs out." But like, I'm happy Bobrovsky won. Like, he's, again, if you want to talk about someone who really did change the game, he was the blueprint for skating goalies for a long time, right? You still look at his career highlights, and he's maybe one of the best skating goalies in the history of the sport. I haven't
like resiliency too, like the up and downs that guy had in his career from Philly to Columbus to Florida. Like, he, like, we want to talk about, like, earlier we talked about like grit and getting gut feelings about guys. Like, there's a perfect example. Like, unbelievable.
Yeah, and like, again, like, as the self-proclaimed like numbers nerd, he was like probably overall like average across the playoffs, but that's all he needed to be for that team. He needed to be consistently average, make a couple big saves, and they were going to win a Stanley Cup, and he did that, right? Like,
when he set a record for the best save percentage in a Stanley Cup Finals. He beat Patrick Roy's 96, 3 shutouts against the Panthers.
You mean Bobrovsky did?
Yeah. What did I say?
He gave up like 5 goals on 15 shots in Game 3 or 4.
That was like
it still won.
That was
still won the Stanley Cup.
That was after the first 3 games.
Yeah. The record after, after the first 3 games, he was on pace to for sure win the Conn Smythe.
This guy, man,
here. No, that's in here. If we can use this as a teaching moment, don't touch snippets from Instagram and base your opinion off it. Okay, that gets you into trouble.
Okay, I got 2 things before we go. Number 1, I was going to apologize for calling you the giant tiger of goalie gurus. I can no longer apologize for that. Number 2, I think we can all be happy for Bobrovsky, but we have to acknowledge that Paul Maurice may be the greatest human being in hockey today.
Oh, what a guy!
That guy, his speech after he won the cup on at least a Canadian feed, before he got it, was sent chills down my spine. Like, I had goosebumps. And I've been a Paul Maurice fan for a long time. I mean, he was in Toronto, and he was cursed with John Ferguson Jr. teams. And then he went to Winnipeg, and I mean, try to find one guy in Winnipeg that doesn't like him. I mean, Jamie probably didn't like him so much, but now having success in Florida, like, just such a wonderful guy, and such a great story to see him have success.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more.
Ben, did you have a hot take?
Do I have like another general hot goaltending take to really wrap this episode up that I think 4 people are going to listen all the way through on?
The 4 of us on here.
Yeah, it's actually just us playing it over and over again. That's all the views. New record on the show, guys. 40,000 downloads, all from the same IP address from every device. My biggest hot take, we just finished our prospects camp, which again, prospects camps are what they are. Some can be good, some can be bad. I thought ours was pretty good. Thought the guy who ran the goalie session put a really good effort forward. My biggest thing for goalies who are getting involved is that if you are what I'm going to call a bubble kid in minor hockey, if you're someone who's played, a little AAA, maybe no AAA, some AA, go out and skate in some junior camps. And I know you're going to spend a little bit of money, and don't go in thinking that you are going to necessarily make a team, but one, crazier things happen. And two, it can be a really eye-opening experience and a reality check for people about what it's actually like, even at a prospects camp, even if you're not with a bunch of full junior guys, but you're people who are junior age and other your peers. I think a lot of times what I see dealing with goalies is, I'm not making it because of this reason, that reason, this reason. Go put yourself out there, and if you can show that you deserve to be there, like even in a small setting, like you can do that. And I think that's important. Again, I'm not a fan of take the $400 and you get 2 minutes of ice over a weekend. I know that it still exists out there, but I think for goalies who, again, can sometimes be like, well, I just haven't been given the chance, is go show it when you do have a chance then, right? Because I hear that a lot. And I just think, believe me, as someone who thinks the hockey system in North America is really not set up to be the best it could be, you still got to, at some point, you still got to stop the puck. You still got to go show people that you can stop the puck. Doesn't matter if the politics of sport have messed you up. That's my hot take.
I think that's a good way to end it. I mean, I can't believe you'd say you don't love North American hockey structure.
It's mold.
And you and I would both openly agree that Finland has the best.
Sorry, you say the Swedish system? I think that's what you're looking for.
All right. Well, Buj, Albo, thanks for coming on. I think it was good. It's just nice to talk. This is, if people wondering what happens when a bunch of goalie coaches get together, this is the conversations we have, or we name different goalies based on their gear and time they played and things like that. But thanks for coming on, Buj, Albo. Where can people find you guys on social media if you want to be found? Buj.
Oh, me? I thought you said, oh, sorry.
Almost like
goaltending on Instagram. I'm there quite a bit, so you guys can reach out to me there if you have any questions, or if you want to tell me I'm completely out to lunch on this hybrid stand-up butterfly thing, which I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for, but I stand by my beliefs.
Albo,
and you can find me at MT Albanese on Instagram, MTALBANESE, and also follow the team that I coach, Dundas Blues Junior C Hockey. We are going to challenge for
the Memorial Cup.
The Memorial.
The Schmaltz. There now.
Hot take there.
Hot take.
We should
made it to the finals. I love how they're like, oh, we made it to the finals. It's like, no, that's the conference finals. Then there's the sub-conference finals. Then there's the division finals, and then there's the fucking
hardest trophy to win.
Oh, you would swear right at the very end. Oh, and I gotta leave that in now.
I gotta put the explicit tag on the episode.
The pause.
There goes the monetization.
Oh, it's weird. It is the hardest cup for those listening. Final thoughts. There's only thing that's harder than to win the Ontario Schmaltz Cup. The only thing harder to do is be a good goalie without subscribing to Jamie Phillips' Patreon. That's your chance. Go check him out on Patreon. That's at Jamie Phillips for the best educational content. Use code BEN10. You get 0 off. Jamie doesn't pay me for this at all.
This is true.
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks once.
Albo, I can't believe you didn't watch the fucking
Jamie, turn the recording on. Yeah.